Hi everyone, today's lesson's on soil nutrition. So we're going to be talking about macronutrients today. Macronutrients is any element that the plant requires in large amounts in order to be healthy. Here we have a list of macronutrients that include elements like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and silicon. Right. Now, not all of these elements the plant gets from the soil. Right. For example, carbon the plant absorbs from the air, so the leaf takes in carbon dioxide, and that's where they get their carbon. Right. Oxygen again also comes from the air, not from the soil. The hydrogen actually comes from water molecules. As we know, water is H2O, and in the process of photosynthesis, that water molecule gets blasted apart, and the plant hangs on to the hydrogen of that water molecule. However, the rest of this list, right, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and silicon, all come from the soil. So we're going to be talking about why the plant needs each of these elements in order to be healthy. Now, on this slide, we see a table, right? And in this table, in the first column, we have the 4 types of organic compounds that are used to make up living things. All right, now you guys learned about this in biology class, and the 4 types of organic compounds are carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. Carbohydrates and lipids are made of the same 3 elements, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Right? Nothing that the plant actually needs from the soil. All 3 of those elements the plants get from either the air or the water. Right? The main function of carbohydrates is to provide energy. Plants also use a carbohydrate called cellulose to make up their cell walls. That's there for support as well in plants. Right? Lipids are mostly there to store energy, right? For us, like we create lipids like fat in order to store energy. Plants usually create oils in order to store energy, so that would be their form of lipids. Now, nucleic acids, in order to make a nucleic acid, this is like DNA and RNA. These are molecules that store genetic information. All living things need them. But you need the elements carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. The nitrogen and phosphorus are 2 elements that the plant must acquire from the soil. And then finally, we have proteins that requires all the same elements as nucleic acids in order to make, plus the addition of sulfur, which again comes from the soil. And proteins are there to help control the rate of chemical reactions. They also provide some structural support for the plant. Now, there are a few elements on that original list of macronutrients that we didn't account for, like potassium, which is abbreviated with the letter K, calcium, silicon, and magnesium. So on this slide, we see why the plant needs those 4 elements, right? Potassium is there to help open and close the stomata, which is found on the underside of the leaves. We learned in our last unit that if the stomata were just left open all the time and the plant couldn't close them because of the lack of potassium, then the plant would be able to photosynthesize, but it would constantly lose water. And if all the stomata were stuck closed, the plant could conserve water but not have the ability to photosynthesize. So it's really important to have potassium to help open and close the stomata. Calcium and silicon kind of do the same thing. Both of these elements are needed to strengthen cell walls. And then finally we have magnesium. Right? And when plants are lacking magnesium, you can usually tell because the leaves start turning yellow. Right? And the reason we see these yellow leaves when there's a lack of magnesium in the soil is because magnesium is one of the main ingredients or the main elements that's needed to make chlorophyll, that green pigment that we find in plants and allows them to photosynthesize. Now, there is one last term I wanted to mention today, and this is the idea of a limiting resource. Right? A limiting resource is that one thing that's holding a plant back from growing to its full potential. Alright? So it's whatever element, whatever materials are going to be in shortest supply for that plant. It's what you run out of first. Right? Usually in the soil, the limiting resource is nitrogen, potassium, or phosphorus. Right? One of those three elements. So I'll give you an example here. They always use like the example of baking cookies for limiting resources. And let's say that you have enough eggs and flour and butter to make, 3 dozen cookies. But you only have enough sugar to make 1 dozen cookies. Right? The total number of cookies you can make is just 1 dozen because you're running out of sugar. Right? If you can add more sugar, you can just bake more cookies. Right? So identifying that limiting resource is always very important to allow that plant to grow to their full potential. Right? In nature, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus are constantly replenished in the soil. However, in like a hydroponic system or an agricultural setting, right, it's up to the grower or the farmer to figure out what's holding their plants back from growing to their full potential and adding that limiting resource to help their plants grow.